We've all heard of the lost city of Atlantis, which, according to tradition, lies somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle. But you probably didn't know that Japan has its own legendary lost kingdom called Yamatai, or that some believe it's been found.
Japan's Ryukyu Islands extend almost to Taiwan, and they've long been an attraction to divers. Most come to see hammerhead sharks, but in 1986, Deborah Dixon Smith came for another reason. She was there to get a special tour of the official site known as Yonaguni.
You go in this dramatic entrance. It was like stepping back in time.
Once out through the other side, a whole city seems to appear.
It really just was one of those wow moments. And when you look over the edge, you can see down into this very, very deep gully. It was very dramatic.
Let's take another look at the details here. There are straight lines, steps, and sharp angles.
It seems to be that whatever this structure is, somebody built it there, and sea levels rose enough that it got submerged.
In this artist's rendering, it looks like a small city or a compound with a pyramid. And as Deborah learned, the site may be connected to an ancient legend.
There's a theory that the video is evidence of an ancient Japanese civilization known as Yamatai. It's said to have been a large, powerful nation that was wiped off the face of the world when sea waters rose and their cities were buried under ocean water.
Yamatai is said to have been ruled by a secretive sorceress named Himiko. Its location has never been determined, much less the reasons for its disappearance.
Here's the thing. Unlike Atlantis, the existence of Yamatai shows up in historic documents from around 300 AD. There's even a record of their queen, Himiko, sending an envoy to the Chinese emperor. The theory is that Yamatai sank due to the shifting tectonic plates in the region. But what's the real story? Let's see how our experts tell it.
Geologist Bob Anderson says it's not unreasonable to think this site was once on dry land.
If you go back 20,000 years ago, the shorelines moved around to different places, so you can't rule out that that was above water.
But did humans build it? The strongest evidence are those angles and steps. They seem too perfect to be formed by nature, at least to our eye. But it turns out that can happen naturally.
These are the sorts of things that geologic formations can break into because of earthquakes or tsunamis as they move. Those plates break in very, very geometric forms. There's no reason to believe that they had to be cut by man.
But if this is all natural, wouldn't we expect to see similar structures all over the planet?
This site is a geological phenomena. I don't know of another area where that large of stones have been moved in that kind of formation. But that does not make it a structure.
One big issue. Barnhart says these massive steps are actually larger than anything ever sculpted, carved, or constructed in the ancient world. And even though this is the most seismically active area of the entire planet, you'd still expect to find more evidence of a prior civilization if one had been here.
These large slabs, you'd expect at least in the cracks to find some sort of evidence of human occupation if it indeed was some sort of sunken place. There's nothing like that whatsoever. Archaeology calls those things geofacts. They look like artifacts, but in fact, they're naturally formed.
Based on Barnhart and Anderson's expertise, we're going to conclude that this site is a natural phenomenon. That means it's not the lost kingdom of Yamatai. Its location is still a mystery. So if you're diving off the coast of Japan, keep your eyes open.
It's July 2014 in the Indian state of Chhattisgarh, where there are a number of caves and paintings made by hunter-gatherer populations going back as far as 10,000 years. Archaeologist J.R. Bhagat claims he recently made a unique discovery here.
और ये शैल चित्र में जो है लगभग 10,000 वर्ष पुराने आदिम मानवों के द्वारा निर्मित में शैल चित्र है.
While giving a tour to reporters, Bhagat shows a rock face, on which there are half a dozen dark red and yellow painted beings standing together in a group.
In this particular painting, which looks quite strange, we have some individuals with larger heads, different colored arms and hands, and they don't look like the other people depicted on these cave walls. So we have a lot of people believing that the ancient humans who painted these drawings were actually painting images of aliens from another world.
The theory that these are depictions of extraterrestrials is bolstered by another painting of what appears to be a mechanical-looking disc painted on the cave ceiling.
It resembles a saucer-shaped object, which became kind of the pop cultural representation of UFOs in the 1950s and 60s.
These aren't the only ancient representations of allegedly extraterrestrial beings.
We also have a number of other ancient civilizations who have created similar things. For instance, we have the Wajina figures in a rock shelter in Australia. We also have petroglyphs in Capitol Reef State Park here in the United States.
Let's take another look at this disc-shaped object from India. These three lines, right here, again right here, and right here, have alternately been described as beams or legs of a tripod, and these apparent portholes, right here and right here, match with contemporary representations of alien spacecraft. So what can our experts unearth about this peculiar cave art?
First, anthropologist Kathy Strange says these ancient drawings must have marked a significant event or encounter.
They're not just doodles. Cave walls are very valuable. So for them to paint this, it must have been something important to them as a people. They're trying to represent something that they want to pass on to the next generation.
These bulbous-headed figures do indeed resemble the humanoid depictions of aliens that eventually dominated in the 20th century, so a connection seems possible. However, archaeologist Ed Barnhart believes they are documentation of a different kind of cosmic trip.
These ancient cultures relied upon people called shamans who would typically go into altered states of consciousness to receive information, and those were induced by hallucinogenic drugs or starvation or sleep deprivation. What they painted on the walls were their experiences they were having during their hallucinogenic trances. In those caves, they would feel like they're floating outside of their body, and they would show themselves elongated and the floor falling out below them.
It's not that the figures' heads were extra large, but that the bodies were stretched as they felt they were floating up. And as for the UFO-like object, that's also more likely something else from the heavens.
Instead of it being a beam from an alien ship, it actually is just sun rays, and they're projecting that the sun is at its full potential, probably noon right above your head. There's other examples in the general area in India and other places in the world that show a very similar object.
Our verdict? These well-preserved Indian rock paintings are most likely the work of shamans from prehistoric hunter-gatherer societies who made them while in an altered state of consciousness. Even if these ancient artists weren't seeing aliens, they were definitely experiencing something truly out of this world.
It's February 2017 in Hong Kong. A professional stunt biker carries his BMX bike up flights of stairs to the top of a skyscraper. He comes out onto the rooftop pool deck of a building we've decided not to reveal. Cameras are rolling as the stunt guy lifts his bike over a low railing, places it on a narrow ledge, and mounts it. He pops a wheelie with the front tire hanging over the edge, then goes for a ride.
This is ridiculous. He's riding his bike on the ledge of a skyscraper, and now he's back to the nice pool. He should stay near the pool area. It is very unsafe what he is doing.
This isn't the only example of him braving the heights to get the perfect shot. In this clip from Dubai, he does acrobatics on a ledge and stretches his body between two edges of the structure. And check this out. In a drone video showing a tall, snow-covered building under construction, another stuntman uses a crane like a set of monkey bars going out across the narrow beam and back. These acts are illegal, so it's little surprise our requests for interviews were declined. But the videos alone suggest these people seem to share an immunity to a fear of heights.
I think humans naturally do have a tendency to be afraid of heights.
That makes sense from a Darwinian perspective. Humans with a genetic aversion to death from falling are more likely to live long enough to reproduce.
Some people can overcome this anxiety or this fear or this biological necessity to stay alive and can place themselves into these situations where they are obviously one minor slip away from certain death.
The Mohawk Indians do this thing called walking iron, which they've done since 1886. They have built many of the most iconic buildings in New York City. The Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building, the Twin Towers. People have said that they have an innate ability to manage heights.
Of course, others have famously used hair-raising heights as sites for stunts.
You have the flying Wallendas doing these incredible stunts, stringing wires between buildings or over Niagara Falls or the Grand Canyon.
So what special ability do these folks have that most lack? Our experts want to see if these clips are even real. If so, how can this be possible?
Forensic video analyst Michael Primo does a macro block analysis of the pixels in the clips from Hong Kong and Dubai.
This is a still frame from the macro block that's reporting red and purple light tones. Then we move on to other areas of movement where the operator is moving his extremities, his arms. And we see this similar pixel information, this red and purple color, that the encoder is saying this is new information. Now, typically when a video is processed, these pixels will be multicolored across the screen. From this macro block analysis, I was able to determine that the encoder was a trustworthy witness. All of these natural details would have had to have been carefully manufactured and recreated in this environment to be able to fool the viewer. In other words, this doesn't appear to be faked.
So if all these videos are real, do these stuntmen have some unique biological makeup that enables them to perform these daring moves so high off the ground?
Some studies have been done that have looked at the genome, and you can pretty accurately look at over 200 different genetic factors and have a highly reliable way of predicting whether someone has a fear of heights.
Still, no fear of heights is only part of the picture. You also need a good sense of balance and proprioception, the ability to tell where your body is in 3D space.
For example, the guy with the bicycle, he's looking down at his handlebars. That's giving him a horizontal axis to inform his reference point of where he is in 3D space.
There are people with greater sense of balance and coordination. But then once you add training to it, now you're talking about a person that can do things that really does look extraordinary. It doesn't look like what a normal person can do.
So the age-old question, is this an innate ability or something learned?
The human brain is plastic. We can rewire it. So these people have either been born with brains that are wired differently or they've rewired them themselves. Because instead of being fearful of the heights, they are actually enjoying the heights. They get a rush out of it.
Our verdict? Like the famous Mohawk iron workers and flying Wallendas, these high-flying stuntmen have learned to control or even feed off their natural fear of heights. Still, there's a degree of luck involved with all these tricks. Please do not try this at home.
A quick warning that some viewers might find the following images disturbing. We're in Jambi, Indonesia. A father at a local bike shop is working as his kids play in front. Then, without warning, the family finds themselves in the path of fatal danger. Watch again. Let's slow it down and freeze. This appears to be the moment Dad senses the car. And in about 0.78 seconds, he springs into action and pulls the children to safety. Incredible. Similar displays of incredible parental reflexes have popped up recently, like in this video from Vietnam in 2019. Just watch that again. The woman is knocked off the motorbike, but still has the presence of mind to grab this child just before she's crushed by the oncoming truck. It's almost too fast to measure. Author Alexis Brooks says it might not just be fast reflexes at work here, but the power of premonition.
One of the theories that has been postulated by noted author Dr. Larry Dossey says that we all essentially have a premonition instinct, but particularly in the case of parents, where there is a unique bond with the child, premonitions can be even more likely.
But even if these parents had a premonition of danger, it's even more astonishing how quickly their bodies were able to react in a fraction of a second.
It's said that typically we only access a portion of our power, perhaps about 65%. But there is a phenomenon called hysterical strength.
There are dozens of anecdotal stories of humans in a moment of panic, summoning extraordinary strength to lift cars or other extremely heavy objects off of trapped individuals, including a mother in Georgia in 1982 who lifted a Chevy Impala off her trapped son.
When something is happening so quick, where there's no time to react, there is a rush of adrenaline that pushes us to do the unfathomable. And I think that might be something that we saw here.
Look, scientists are divided on the existence of this phenomena because it's nearly impossible to test emergency situations in a controlled lab. However, these videos might be proof of either parental ESP or superhuman reflexes. To be sure, we call in the experts.
Although it's entirely possible and conceivable to manipulate events like this using sophisticated software, technology, I don't see or detect any evidence to support that that's what was done here.
So the video is legit, but physicist Michio Kaku doubts it's proof of a premonition.
Sometimes we have premonition that an accident will happen, and then sometimes it does, in which case you think that maybe you're psychic. Most premonitions are false alarms, but 1 time out of 10, maybe it does prepare you for an emergency. So this ability of ours to, quote, predict the future by having a premonition is very selective. We forget all the misses.
So if this wasn't the result of a true premonition, perhaps these lightning-fast reflexes are related to hysterical strength.
Usually when you perform something, your prefrontal cortex acts as a check and says, slow down, do it this way, do it that way. However, in an emergency, where split-second decisions have to be made, a lot of the prefrontal cortex's decisions are overruled. All of a sudden, you take risks. Yes, muscles will tear. Yes, you're going to suffer damage, but you do it anyway because the adrenaline says you can do it.
Our verdict. While we can't prove or disprove these parents had a premonition, it was certainly adrenaline that gave them extraordinary reflexes at just the right time.